The announcement. The Horizon Innovation Summit transformed the Seattle Convention Center into a futuristic wonderland. Holographic displays showcased next-generation technologies, while the industry's brightest minds networked over sustainable canapés and carbon-neutral cocktails. Olivia felt distinctly out of place. She'd chosen a forest green dress that complemented her eyes but still maintained her professional image. Around her neck, Harrison's key pendant rested against her collarbone, a small comfort as she navigated this unfamiliar world. "Dr. Reed, your research on bioadaptive materials is fascinating," said a young engineer, the third person to recognize her that evening. "I never expected to see you at a corporate event like this." "I'm full of surprises," Olivia replied with a tight smile, scanning the room for Harrison. He'd been pulled away for last-minute preparations almost immediately after their arrival, leaving her to fend for herself. Across the room, Harrison was engaged in intense conversation with his board. Chairman Thomas Blackwood. At 65, Thomas had been Harrison's mentor and earliest investor, but his expression now was grave. "You can't keep this up, Harrison," Thomas muttered. "The board is concerned about these rumors." "What rumors?" Harrison's jaw tightened. "That your separation from Valerie isn't as final as you've led everyone to believe. That you've been seen with another woman." Thomas nodded subtly toward Olivia. "Is that her? The environmental scientist?" Harrison's eyes flashed. "My personal life is not board business." "It is when Valerie's family trust still controls 20% of Horizon's shares," Thomas countered. "You need to clear this up, tonight, before the investors start asking questions." The lights dimmed, signaling the start of the presentation. Harrison made his way to the stage, his usual confidence masking the turmoil beneath. As he took the microphone, he spotted Olivia standing near the back, and something shifted inside him. "Welcome to the 5th Annual Horizon Innovation Summit," he began, his voice echoing through the hall. "Tonight we celebrate not just technology but vision, the courage to imagine a different future and the determination to create it." For 40 minutes, Harrison captivated the audience with Horizon's achievements and ambitious plans. Then, as he approached his conclusion, he went off script. "Many of you know that the past few years have been, transformative for me personally," he said, his voice softening. "What you may not know is that I've been fortunate enough to find someone who has changed my perspective on what truly matters." A murmur rippled through the crowd. In the wings, Thomas shook his head in warning. "Dr. Olivia Reed isn't just one of the most brilliant environmental scientists of our generation," Harrison continued, ignoring him. "She's shown me that innovation without purpose is meaningless, and tonight I want to publicly acknowledge what she means to me." Olivia froze as spotlights found her in the crowd. Hundreds of faces turned in her direction. "Olivia has agreed to join her life with mine," Harrison announced, his eyes finding hers across the distance. "After my divorce is finalized, she will become my wife. Together, we'll lead Horizon into an era where profit and planetary health go hand in hand." The audience erupted in applause, cameras flashed, and social media immediately lit up with the news. Olivia stood immobile, shock washing over her. He hadn't proposed. They'd never even discussed marriage. Yet here he was, announcing their engagement to the world. As Harrison left the stage to approach her, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. The crowd parted to reveal a striking woman in a tailored midnight blue pantsuit. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, highlighting her sharp cheekbones and determined expression. Valerie Wells moved through the room with the confidence of someone who belonged there, because she did. As co-founder of Horizon Technologies and Harrison's wife of 15 years, this was as much her world as his. Harrison stopped mid-stride, the color draining from his face. The triumphant smile he'd worn moments before dissolved into an expression of pure dread as Valerie approached, holding a sealed envelope in one perfectly manicured hand. "Hello, Harrison," she said, her voice carrying in the sudden silence. "I think we need to talk." The revelation. The VIP lounge of the convention center had been hastily cleared, leaving only 3 people in a triangle of tension. Harrison stood with his back to the panoramic windows, Seattle's night skyline twinkling behind him like distant, indifferent stars. Olivia sat rigidly on a sleek sofa, her fingers unconsciously touching the key pendant at her throat. Valerie remained standing, the sealed envelope now resting on the glass coffee table between them. "You haven't answered my calls for weeks," Valerie said to Harrison, her composure remarkable given the circumstances. "I've been busy," he replied lamely. Clearly, Valerie's gaze shifted to Olivia. "Dr. Reed, I apologize for interrupting your engagement announcement. I'm Valerie Wells, Harrison's wife, not estranged, not separated, certainly not divorced, or anywhere near it." Olivia's throat constricted. "He told me you were—" "Of course he did," Valerie cut in, not unkindly. "Harrison has always excelled at creating convenient narratives." Harrison stepped forward. "This isn't how I wanted things to—" "Stop!" Valerie commanded. "For once in your life, Harrison, just stop talking." She turned back to Olivia. "How long have you been seeing my husband?" 8 months, Olivia answered, her voice steadier than she felt. "He said your marriage had been over in everything but paperwork for years." A flicker of pain crossed Valerie's face. "We've had our struggles, especially after the accident. But over is an interesting interpretation." "The accident?" Olivia looked between them. 3 years ago, Valerie explained. "I was driving. The roads were icy. We lost control near Snoqualmie Pass." Her hand unconsciously moved to her abdomen. "I was 7 months pregnant. Our daughter didn't survive." Olivia closed her eyes, the weight of this revelation crushing down on her. "I'm so sorry. He never mentioned—" "Harrison processes grief by pretending it doesn't exist," Valerie said. "We tried counseling. He threw himself into work instead. But we never legally separated." Harrison paced, running his hands through his hair. "You moved to London for that research fellowship. What was I supposed to think?" "That I needed space to heal," Valerie replied. "Not that I was giving you permission to construct a new life with someone else." She picked up the envelope from the table. "Which brings me to why I'm here tonight." She handed the envelope to Harrison, who opened it with trembling fingers. As he read the contents, his expression shifted from confusion to shock. "Is this confirmed?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Valerie nodded. 3 separate opinions. "I'm 16 weeks along. It happened during your visit to London in February." The room spun around Olivia as the implications became clear. While Harrison had been telling her they were close to starting their life together, he had been intimate with his wife, conceiving a child in the process. "You came to my hotel room," Harrison said, almost to himself. "You said you wanted to try again. And you didn't stop to mention you were involved with someone else." Valerie replied sharply. "I thought we were finally healing, finally moving forward together." She turned to Olivia. "I didn't know about you. I swear I didn't." Olivia stood abruptly, needing to put distance between herself and this nightmare. "You're pregnant with his child." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Valerie confirmed. "After what we lost, this feels like a miracle. But I didn't come here to claim Harrison or ruin your relationship. I came because he deserves to know about his child, and because I deserved the truth about what he's been doing while I've been away." Harrison moved toward Olivia. "I can explain." "Explain what?" Olivia interrupted, her voice rising. "How you've been lying to both of us. How you just announced an engagement we never discussed to a room full of people without even consulting me. How you've been building a fantasy future with me while creating an actual future with your wife." The key pendant suddenly felt like it was burning against her skin. Olivia reached behind her neck, unclasped it, and placed it on the table. "Congratulations on your baby," she said to Valerie, with genuine sincerity beneath her pain. "I think you both have a lot to discuss. I won't be part of it." As Olivia walked toward the door, Harrison called after her. "Olivia, please! The house on Bainbridge is real. Our plans can still—" She turned one last time, her eyes meeting his. "There is no hour anymore, Harrison. There never really was." Golden handcuffs, Olivia Reed tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she studied the latest climate impact report on her tablet. The soft glow from her screen illuminated her face in the dim corner of Cascade Coffee, her usual Sunday morning spot in downtown Seattle. At 34, Olivia had built a reputation as one of the West Coast's most respected environmental scientists, having turned down lucrative corporate positions to remain independent and true to her research. Working even on a Sunday? That's dedication, came a familiar voice. She looked up to see Harrison Wells sliding into the seat across from her, his cobalt blue eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. At 42, Harrison had the confident ease of a man who'd conquered his corner of the world, founder and CEO of Horizon Technologies, with a net worth that had recently crossed into billionaire territory. "Some of us don't have the luxury of delegating everything," she teased, but set her tablet aside. After 8 months together, Harrison's unexpected appearances still made her heart skip. "That's what makes you exceptional," he said, reaching across to squeeze her hand. "Most people would have sold out by now." Their relationship had begun unexpectedly at a climate tech conference where Olivia had been a featured speaker. Harrison had approached her afterward, ostensibly to discuss potential applications of her research. One coffee meeting had turned into dinner, which had turned into a connection neither had anticipated. "How was Tokyo?" she asked, noticing the subtle signs of jet lag around his eyes. "Productive, exhausting, lonely." He rubbed his thumb across her knuckles. "I kept wishing you were there." Olivia smiled but felt the familiar twinge of uncertainty. Their relationship existed in carefully scheduled blocks of time, in private. Corners of the city, in weekend getaways to places where Harrison wasn't likely to be recognized. He had explained early on that he was separated from his wife Valerie, but the divorce was complicated by business entanglements and family trusts. "You could have invited me," she said lightly, though they both knew she wouldn't have gone. Olivia had established clear boundaries. She wouldn't be the secret girlfriend appearing only when convenient. "Soon, we won't need to worry about any of that," Harrison promised, his voice dropping. "The lawyers think we're close to finalizing everything." Olivia nodded, having heard variations of this promise before. Still, something about Harrison made her willing to wait, perhaps his unwavering support of her work, or the vulnerability he showed only with her. Later that evening in Harrison's downtown penthouse, Olivia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The sunset painted the sky in dramatic oranges and purples, the water reflecting the fading light. "I have something for you," Harrison said, coming up behind her. He slipped a small velvet box into her hand. "Harrison," she began, instantly wary. "It's not what you think," he assured her. "Open it." Inside wasn't a ring, but a delicate platinum key pendant on a chain. "It's symbolic," he explained, fastening it around her neck. "I've purchased a house on Bainbridge Island, completely in my name. No connections to the company or any shared assets. It's where we'll start our life together once everything's settled." Olivia touched the key, emotion welling in her throat. It was the first concrete step toward the future he'd been promising. "The Horizon Innovation Summit is next weekend," Harrison continued. "I want you there with me." "As what, exactly?" she asked carefully. "As the brilliant Dr. Olivia Reed," he said, kissing her forehead. "And as the woman I intend to spend my life with." What Olivia didn't see was the text message lighting up Harrison's phone on the kitchen counter. "We need to talk. It's important." Valerie. Aftermath rain lashed against the windows of Olivia's apartment as she methodically packed away the remnants of her relationship with Harrison. Each item, a cashmere scarf from their weekend in Vancouver, a rare first-edition book on marine ecology he'd found for her birthday, photos from hikes on Mount Rainier, represented a moment she'd thought was genuine but now questioned. Her phone buzzed continuously with messages and calls, from colleagues who'd seen the news of her engagement splashed across technology blogs, from friends concerned about the subsequent scandal when Valerie's appearance had gone viral, and from Harrison himself, whose desperate texts she couldn't bring herself to read. A knock at her door broke through the rhythmic patter of rain. Olivia tensed, fearing Harrison had come to her apartment. But when she checked the peephole, she was shocked to see Valerie. "May I come in?" Valerie asked when Olivia opened the door. "I won't stay long." Olivia hesitated, then stepped aside. Valerie entered, removing her rain jacket to reveal the subtle curve of her pregnancy beneath a simple sweater. "I'm not here to fight," Valerie said, taking in the half-packed boxes scattered around the living room. "But I felt we deserved a conversation without Harrison present." Olivia gestured to the couch, clearing away a stack of journals. "Would you like some tea?" "Thank you." Valerie nodded, sitting down carefully. "Earl Grey, if you have it." In the kitchen, Olivia's hands shook slightly as she prepared the tea. Of all the scenarios she'd imagined for this week, hosting her lover's pregnant wife for tea hadn't been among them. "He's been calling you too, I assume," Valerie said when Olivia returned with 2 steaming mugs. "Non-stop," Olivia confirmed. "I haven't answered." "Neither have I." Valerie took a sip of tea. "Harrison has always believed he can fix anything with enough words, enough promises. Even when our daughter died," her voice caught. "He kept talking about fertility treatments, surrogacy options, as if replacing her would solve our grief." Olivia's throat tightened. "I truly didn't know you were still together. If I had—" "I believe you," Valerie said simply. "Harrison compartmentalizes his life to an extraordinary degree. It's what makes him brilliant at business and terrible at relationships." "How did you find out about me?" Olivia asked. "I didn't, until that announcement. I came to the summit because my doctors finally cleared me to travel, and I wanted to tell Harrison about the pregnancy in person." Valerie's hand rested on her stomach. "I had this romantic notion that a new baby might be our second chance." The irony hung heavy between them. "What will you do now?" Olivia asked. "Return to London to continue my research. Have this baby. Build a life that doesn't revolve around Harrison's whims." Valerie's determination was palpable. "And you?" Olivia glanced at the research proposals spread across her desk. "I've been offered a position leading a climate resilience study in New Zealand. I was hesitant to accept because of Harrison. That's no longer an obstacle." "He'll try to win you back," Valerie warned. "He's already talking about divorce, for real this time." "It doesn't matter," Olivia said firmly. "I won't be someone's contingency plan." Valerie smiled unexpectedly. "You know, under different circumstances, I think we could have been friends." "Perhaps we still can be," Olivia suggested, surprising herself. "Not close friends, obviously, but friendly. For the sake of your child, if nothing else. They deserve to have people in their life who can be civil to each other." As Valerie prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Harrison isn't a villain, Olivia. He's just a man who never learned that love isn't something you can engineer or optimize. He's terrified of loss, so he tries to control everything and everyone around him." "I know," Olivia acknowledged. "That doesn't excuse what he did to either of us." "No," Valerie agreed. "It doesn't, but understanding it might help us both move forward." After Valerie left, Olivia stood at her window watching the rain transform the city into a watercolor painting of blurred lights and reflections. For the first time in days, she felt something close to peace. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was hers alone to choose. New beginnings, 18 months later, Harrison Wells stood on the observation deck of the Space Needle, watching a ferry cut across Elliott Bay toward Bainbridge Island. The house he'd purchased there, the one he'd promised to Olivia, had remained empty for months before he finally sold it to a retired couple from California. His phone vibrated with a calendar notification. Emma's first birthday, 3 p.m. A smile crossed his face as he thought of his daughter, with her wispy blonde hair and his blue eyes. Though he and Valerie had finalized their divorce shortly after Emma's birth, they had established a co-parenting arrangement that allowed Harrison to be present in his daughter's life despite the distance. Valerie had permanently relocated to London, where she now led a prestigious research institute. Their interactions were strictly limited to Emma's well-being, but over time, a fragile respect had developed between them. Today would be their first attempt at celebrating a milestone together, an experiment in putting the past behind them, for their daughter's sake. Harrison's company had weathered the scandal of his personal life, though not without cost. Thomas had insisted on a public apology and a temporary step back from public-facing roles. In the months of relative isolation that followed, Harrison had been forced to confront truths about himself he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. Weekly therapy sessions had slowly unraveled his patterns of compartmentalization and control. The grief he'd never properly processed over his first daughter's death had finally begun to surface, painful but necessary. For the first time, Harrison was learning to sit with his emotions rather than escape them through work or new relationships. As he descended from the Space Needle and walked to his car, Harrison's thoughts turned to Olivia. He hadn't contacted her since she'd made it clear that any further attempts would result in a restraining order. Through mutual acquaintances, he'd learned she was thriving in New Zealand, her climate resilience project gaining international recognition. Occasionally, he saw her quoted in scientific journals or featured in documentaries about environmental innovation. In one recent interview, she'd mentioned a new relationship with a marine biologist who shared her passion for ocean conservation. Harrison had felt a pang of what he now recognized as genuine happiness for her, untainted by possessiveness. The bakery was his last stop before heading to the neutral location they'd chosen for Emma's small celebration, a private room at the Children's Museum. As he collected the cake, his phone rang with Valerie's number. "I'm running about 10 minutes late," he said by way of greeting. "Traffic on Fifth Avenue is terrible. Actually, that's why I'm calling," Valerie replied, her voice tight with something Harrison couldn't identify. "There's someone else who's asked to attend today. I wanted to prepare you." Harrison frowned. "Who?" "Olivia Reed." The name hit him like a physical force. "Why would she—" "She's been working with my research institute this past month," Valerie explained. "We've become friends, I suppose. She's returning to New Zealand tomorrow and wanted to say goodbye in person." "And you invited her to our daughter's birthday party?" Harrison asked incredulously. "No, Harrison. I told her where we would be, and she asked if she could stop by briefly. I said it was up to you." Valerie paused. "Consider it a chance for proper closure, something we all might benefit from." After a long moment, Harrison found himself saying, "Okay, tell her she's welcome." 2 hours later, as Emma gleefully smashed cake between her tiny fingers, Harrison observed the remarkable scene around him. Valerie chatted easily with Olivia, who had arrived bearing a children's book about marine conservation as a gift. The tension he'd expected was notably absent, replaced by something that resembled healing. When Olivia approached him during a quiet moment, Harrison felt strangely calm. "She's beautiful," Olivia said, nodding toward Emma. "She has your eyes." "And, thankfully, her mother's temperament," Harrison replied with a self-deprecating smile. "Your work in New Zealand sounds incredible." "It is," Olivia confirmed. "Everything worked out as it should have." "I never properly apologized to you," Harrison said quietly. Not without excuses or explanations. No, you didn't, Olivia acknowledged. But seeing you here today, being a father to your daughter, makes me think you might finally understand what I couldn't explain back then. That love isn't a strategic acquisition. That honesty is the only foundation worth building on, she corrected gently. As Olivia prepared to leave, she handed Harrison a business card. My institute is collaborating with several tech companies on climate adaptation technologies. If Horizon would like to be part of that conversation, my team would welcome the partnership. Harrison recognized the gesture for what it was. Not forgiveness exactly, but a bridge toward something new, something honest. I'd like that, he said simply. Later, as he helped Valerie pack Emma's presents into her car, Harrison felt a sense of completion. The chaotic triangle they had once formed had transformed into a different geometry, separate lives that occasionally intersected, bound by respect if not romance. You did well today, Valerie said, surprising him. I'm trying, Harrison replied. As he watched them drive away, Harrison realized that the man who had once juggled secrets and compartmentalized his life no longer existed. In his place stood someone humbler, more honest, still flawed, still learning, but finally facing in one direction instead of many. Emma would never know the tangled circumstances of her parents' past. She would know only that she was deeply loved, that honesty was valued above convenience, and that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings arose from painful endings. Harrison turned toward the sunset, ready to build something real at last.